this comes down to the same thing, especially for a first-time home buyer. When you're signing these documents for these contingencies, when you're signing an offer and all these things, you got to make sure that you're really reading these documents, because what happens if when your agent was drafting up these documents, they didn't protect you properly, and yeah, you offered 500K, but then they didn't put in that little stipulation that says, as long as it's not more than 10,000 over, as long as it's not more than 5. But if they didn't put that in there, right? So you really need to make sure that even if you have a discussion with your agent, that once you sign the documentation, that it matches what you discussed. You can't just blindly sign everything saying, oh, it's all good, this is going to happen. Just make sure you read your documents.
What do we got on the agenda today? Oh yeah, I want to talk about offer price, okay, versus sales price, okay? Because a lot of first-time home buyers are confused about this. Let's say you submitted an offer on a home, okay? Let's just say you submitted 500K. When you submitted 500K, let's say you put in some terms on the offer stating that, seller, if the home does not appraise for 500K, I'm willing to pay appraisal gap up to $10,000 as long as it does not exceed $500,000. Let's say you put that in one of the terms and they accept your offer. That's our offer price. But if the home appraises at, let's say, $450,000, okay, $450,000, but you put in the term that you're willing to pay $10,000 above appraisal value as long as it doesn't exceed 500K, right, Charles? Remember these numbers for me, okay, in case I forget. So it's 450. It appraised at 450, and you were willing to pay the gap up to 10,000. So now the total purchase price just went down from 500K offer price to 460. That makes sense, right, Charles?
Mm-hmm.
Because it appraised at 450, but you were willing to come in the difference up to $10,000. So that's now added to the 450, which totals 460. That is your new purchase price. Okay, so now an addendum gets drawn up by the agent and all parties sign. You submit that addendum to your lender and they change everything, because it can be very confusing and overwhelming for first-time home buyers. Because if you submit an offer and it's everybody has on their documentations and that they're sending to you, your loan amounts, your disclosures, and it says 500K, and you're thinking, man, but what if the home don't appraise? Like, am I stuck at 500K? No, you're not, because you put that term in the offer. So whatever it appraised at, you're just going to be paying up to $10,000. So for example, again, let's say it appraised at $490,000. You were willing to pay $10,000, right? As long as it doesn't exceed 500K. Well, the total purchase price also is still at 500K, because it appraised at 490 plus your 10K appraisal gap equals 500K. So the seller ended up still getting 500K. But if it appraises at exactly 500K, your offer price, you don't need to pay $10,000 extra to where the seller is going to get 510 total. See now? So because that term that you initially put in the beginning of your offer, that you're willing to pay an appraisal gap up to $10,000 as long as the total price don't exceed 500K, that protected you from not overpaying, even though you agreed to pay 10K above appraisal. So now, even though it appraised at 500K, you don't have to come out of pocket additional $10,000 to your closing costs, and the seller still gets 500K. Your purchase price will remain 500K. Hopefully that makes sense for a lot of you guys. That makes sense, right, Charles?
It does. And you know, I kind of wanted to go into something else on top of that before we get into contingencies. So this comes down to the same thing, especially for a first-time home buyer. And we'll talk about this with home inspections too. When you're signing these documents, when your agent is setting this up for you, and you're signing these documents for these contingencies, for these, you know, when you're signing an offer and all these things, you got to make sure that you're really reading these documents, because, you know, yeah, I know there's a lot of legal jargon, but this is a perfect example of a situation. What happens if when your agent was drafting up these documents, they didn't protect you properly, and, you know, yeah, you offered, you know, 500K, but then they didn't put in that little stipulation that says, as long as it's not more than, you know, 10,000 over, as long as it's not more than 5. But they didn't put that in there, right? So you really need to make sure that even if you have a discussion with your agent, that once you sign the documentation, that it matches what you discussed. You can't just blindly sign everything saying, oh, it's all good, this is going to happen. Just make sure you read your documents. It's very important. There's a lot of things that can be left out, and then make sure that once everybody agrees to everything, that there's all of your documents, everybody's signed it, and you have a copy of that, and you can see that everyone signed it and everything's actually been executed properly.
That's right. There is bad apples in every industry, okay? So Charles is correct about that too, where they just write an offer and they don't explain anything to the clients. Yes, that happens. Worst case, let's say that did happen. They still have to come back to you as the buyer to sign addendums when there's any change in the transaction. So for example, let's say the agent did not write that term in that offer, okay? In this example, they offered 500K and they didn't put the term in there. If it doesn't appraise, you still have your contingencies, which is your appraisal and your loan contingency if you haven't removed it yet. Because now your appraisal contingency protects you as a buyer in the event that the home doesn't appraise and you offered 500K initially, but the home came in at 450. What are you gonna do now? So now you send that appraisal report to the sellers, what your agent does, and then you renegotiate again. Seller might come back and say, nope, I want 500K, so you better pay the difference in 50K cash. Or they might say, meet me in the middle, 475. Or they might just say, okay, I'm feeling generous today, I'll give you 450. Any of those three things could happen, okay? And in the middle of that negotiations, there's gonna be a lot of going back and forth. If there's ever a time that you do not agree with the terms that's being laid out and there's just no solution to a win-win, then you can exercise your right on your appraisal and cancel and get your full earnest money deposit back. But you do lose out on your inspection fees. You already lost out on home inspections if you ordered one. You lost out on your appraisal fee that you ordered to find the value of the home. So that could run you a little bit over $1,000. Okay, so for me, that's okay, because then you're buying a home. It's a big investment, and you want to make sure that you're not gonna have buyer remorse. That's the last thing you want. Okay, especially in this market and high rates, you do not want to have buyer remorse, because if you were my client and you have buyer remorse, I'm not going to be able to sleep. I'm not going to be able to sleep at night. Me and my wife, we're going to be putting my baby to sleep, and then we're going to be talking about this the whole time. And we're going to be like, man, I can't believe that happened. My client's not happy, this and that. Man, like, knock on wood, that's never happened to me, because I tend to like to over communicate things to my clients, so that way they fully understand everything before they remove any contingencies. Now, speaking of contingencies, Charles is a home inspector. You guys all know that. You guys see him on the live shows now, and you guys are wondering, why is he always on? Because he's cool, okay? And he has a nice piano in the house. But he's a home inspector. One of your contingencies is inspections. When you buy a home, do your inspections, because last thing you want is to go in, buy a home, and find out, oh my lord, there's mold in the attic, there's mold here and there, the electrical is shorted. Whenever I turn the light switch for the front porch on, my kitchen light turns on. That's the last thing you want, right? And then now you can't do anything about it because you removed the inspection contingencies. So when you submit an offer, especially right now, sellers, it's not that aggressive in the market. Sellers are more accommodating. So keep your contingencies, exercise your contingencies, order a home inspection, call Charles to go and inspect. All right, well, I'm going to close up with that. I know we didn't go over all the topics I wanted to go over, but we still got next week. Still have next time. I think I'm going to close it out. All right, Chi fam, so you guys take care. Thank you again for joining us today. All the likes, all the comments. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back next time. Peace.